Everyone knows it takes a certain kind of weird to make it in showbiz, but decorated comedy veteran Bill Murray is in a league all his own. From Caddyshack to SNL to Groundhog Day and back, Mr. Murray has enjoyed a decades-long career spanning every imaginable genre. Whether playing modern-day Scrooge or hamming it up as a screwball camp counselor, old Bizarre Bill is as wild as they come. So, to celebrate his personal brand of strange, we're doing a countdown of 25 indisputable facts about Bill Murray that are just so Bill Murray. Every Bill Murray fan, which, if my life is any indication, includes all dads over the age of 35, is familiar with Caddyshack, the screwball golf comedy in which Murray plays groundskeeper and absolute loon Carl Spackler. Many of the film's funniest moments are centered around Spackler's attempts to send west one slippery groundhog non grata who has been seen chewing up the golf course. If an insane groundskeeper sounds right up Bill Murray's alley, that's because, yeah, it was. In fact, Murray's performance of Spackler's absurd antics only took the actor a total of 6 days. 6. It takes me 6 days to send one email. Unbelievably though, Murray's remarkable efficiency on set isn't the most insane fact about his iconic portrayal of Spackler. Which brings us to Murray improvised every bit of his scenes in Caddyshack, on the spot. That's right, in 6 days, with no compass beyond his comedic instincts and impeccable sense of timing. Bill Murray delivered one of the most memorable performances in all of modern comedy. As anyone who has ever attended an improv comedy show knows, bad improvisation can be slow and painful, while good improv is very difficult to actually achieve. There aren't a lot of actors, even comedic actors, who could pull this off. Alright, the year is 2004. Times are simple. iPhones haven't been invented yet, and computer-animated animal films are just starting to infiltrate mainstream culture with all the tact of a battering ram made of disco balls. Bill Murray, scanning a script, notices the director's name and signs onto the project immediately. The name of that director? Joel Cohen. Cohen. With an H. Unfortunately for Murray, he must have missed that H because he later admitted to having mistaken Joel Cohen for Joel Coen of the Coen brothers, the legendary duo responsible for films like The Big Lebowski and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Bill Murray had not just signed onto their next groundbreaking flick, he had instead signed up to play the misanthropic fat cat Garfield in, well, Garfield, which turned out to be one of those painful computer-animated animal movies we talked about earlier. Ouch. Must have been a Monday. Now, most Hollywood A-listers have a professional agent who represents them to sift through projects and pick the best ones. Bill Murray, in case you haven't guessed, is not like other people. Instead of an agent, the actor maintains an automated phone line through which anyone can call and leave their pitch. This ends up being as absurd as it sounds, but still, it's pretty cool that he makes himself accessible to anyone with a good idea, who can also manage to wrangle that phone number. He still hasn't called me back about my Claymation Citizen Kane remake, though. His loss. Bill Murray has been guilty of turning down roles which ended up being iconic, breakout, or straight up historic for the actor that ended up taking them. Apparently, the lead role of Ted Stryker in Airplane was one such part Murray wanted no part in. Missing out on Airplane would be a bad enough move for most actors to hire an assistant just to double check their decision making, except get this, a few years later, Murray turned down the role of Forrest Gump. Yeah, great break for Tom Hanks though. Now, the funniest part of all these missed opportunities, Murray doesn't seem to mind them. In fact, he claims he only regrets turning down one project, Little Miss Sunshine. How'd that happen? He didn't check his automated answering machine until it was too late. Seriously, this would happen several more times throughout his career. St. Andrews, Scotland, 2006. I still remember the headlines. Back then, Murray was in St. Andrews, Scotland when he followed a group of Scandinavian university students back to their house party. And don't worry, he was invited, and proceeded to drink some of their vodka and then promptly start doing their dishes. Yep, Bill Murray is apparently the type of guy who crashes your college party in his late 50s and then decides to clean up after all your wild college friends. You know, the type of guy that is Bill Murray, and only Bill Murray. No one else does this. In case anyone thinks this was a one-off, Murray did it again in 2019 when the Space Jam co-star was documented attending a party held by students at Glasgow University. Now in his 70s, Murray joined the students for drinks before leaping up to sing a duet of Scottish folk song Loch Lomond. It might be tempting to think that Bill Murray has grown into his Bill Murrayness over the decades, but stories from his early years seem to show that he's been like this since the beginning. Take, for instance, the nickname bestowed upon Murray by his friend, frequent collaborator, and fellow SNL cast member Dan Akroyd. In a nod, or maybe a jab, at his friend's chaotic antics and occasional tantrums, Akroyd started referring to Murray as the Murricane. Fitting, honestly. Bill Murray has always been one of Wes Anderson's most stalwart and attentive stars, appearing in nearly every film the director has ever made, one after another. In return, Anderson has provided a steady stream of thoroughly Murray-esque roles for the actor to enjoy. The generosity shared by the two men doesn't stop there, however. Back when they were filming Rushmore, Murray offered Anderson a $25,000 check to cover the cost of a helicopter their studio was refusing to pay for. The scene wound up never being shot, and Anderson had the check framed, presumably seeing it as the ultimate memento, forever reminding him that Bill freaking Murray was willing to spend more than he was even going to make on this little indie film. Kingpin, a comedy about bowling from 1996, finds Murray taking up the mantle of Ernie McCracken, an unstoppable bowling champ and the main antagonist. Murray, rarely the villain, delivers a delightful performance, but that's a given at this point. What actually gets Kingpin onto this list is that Bill Murray really pulled off one of the final scenes. He really did bowl a turkey. A turkey is bowling slang that refers to throwing 3 consecutive strikes in a row, which is essentially the equivalent of scoring a perfect 10 in gymnastics. Normally, the scene should have involved either Hollywood magic or a dedicated bowling double, but apparently Bill Murray is the Jackie Chan of bowling because he managed to pull off the turkey while the audience reacts with very genuine surprise. Ready for some deja vu? Back in the 90s, Murray was offered the role of Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story. And what did he do? That's right, he took the only sensible Bill Murray solution. He turned it down. This was good news for Tim Allen. At this point, it's tempting to see Bill Murray as some sort of wingman for other famous actors, but who knows? Maybe he just didn't check his answering machine again. Or maybe his personal motto is to infinity and then Tom Hanks, and if Tom Hanks isn't biting, then let's see if Tim Allen is around. Remember the bright hat he sported for the entirety of The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou? That hat is actually a direct reference to the kind of hats worn by the real-life French explorer, conservationist, and filmmaker Jacques Cousteau, upon whom Murray's role in the film is based. Given how often Murray's characters end up wearing hats, maybe it's not so surprising that this reference escaped the notice of a lot of people, but anyone who Googles Jacques Cousteau will find the resemblance uncanny. Seriously, I'm not convinced Bill Murray didn't just steal the real hat. He didn't, but wouldn't it be pretty Bill Murray of him if he had? Speaking of The Life Aquatic, Murray worked so hard to prepare for his role that he ended up earning his diving certification. He reportedly spent dozens of hours on practice dives, which at this point begs the question, does Bill Murray actually just use practice diving to prepare for every role? There's no evidence to support this, but also, this is Bill Murray we're talking about here. Anything is possible. Did you know that Bill Murray is a member of comic book crime-fighting quartet The Fantastic Four? Well, he is. Sort of. See, way back in 1975, before Bill Murray was well known and when radio plays were still a thing people listened to, he got cast as the voice of Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, in what turned out to be a pretty forgettable adaptation of the comics. It's understandable that he took the gig. It's very common, practically expected, for performers early in their careers to take on any project that comes their way. Still, it's pretty funny to think that the same guy who went on to turn both Forrest Gump and Buzz Lightyear down totally showed up to bring the Human Torch to life. David Letterman has a deserved reputation as one of the greatest hosts in television history, up there with Oprah, Johnny Carson, and Kermit the Frog. He's been around forever, too. Letterman's first ever guest on The Late Show arrived to be interviewed all the way back in 1982. And yes, it was Bill Murray. His first appearance on the show was uproarious and bizarre. Murray shared with the audience cutting monologues, a performed mental breakdown, a short film about a panda bear, and as the final feather in his cap, sent off the show by doing aerobics while singing the Grammy Award-winning tune Physical by Olivia Newton-John. Wow. After their first encounter, Murray remained a consistent guest on Letterman's various shows, showing up each time with a new gimmick. Once he sang "I Can Fly" as part of a fake audition for Peter Pan, another time he shaved his beard off. Years later, Murray spent a segment showing a video of his recent skiing accident at Sundance, and a few years later, the actor agreed to be tased on camera. Bill Murray, he's a character, and one that Letterman enjoyed again and again. I mean, otherwise he would have just stopped inviting the guy, right? But Letterman never did stop, and in 2015, Bill Murray put the cherry on their decades-long friendship when he appeared as the final guest on The Late Show with David Letterman. He burst out of a cake. Peter Venkman is one of Bill Murray's most famous roles, up there with Carl Spackler and others, but Venkman was never meant to be played by Murray. The role was actually written with fellow SNL cast member John Belushi in mind. On one hand, Murray is amazing as Venkman, he's great. On the other hand, Belushi being cast would have meant a potential crossover with the Blues Brothers, where Belushi's characters are revealed as being the same person, living a double life as a jazz bum and a ghost hunter. Not long after starring as Venkman in Ghostbusters, Murray was allowed by the same studio to make a movie adaptation of a book by Somerset Maugham titled The Razor's Edge. When the film was a financial flop, what did the Murricane do? He moved to Europe and spent the next year studying philosophy at La Sorbonne, one of the most famous schools in Paris. Classic Bill Murray. Luckily for all of us, Murray returned to acting shortly thereafter. It's not surprising that when Bill the Murricane Murray worked alongside famed bad boy of the journalism world Hunter S Thompson, things got hairy. Really hairy. The pair ended up working together on Where the Buffalo Roam, but it was during their off hours that the two decided to challenge each other to a Houdini off, which culminated in Murray nearly drowning after he allowed Thompson to tie him to a chair and then throw him into the pool. Luckily, Murray survived, but there's no word on how the chair is doing. Not content getting into nearly fatal escape artist competitions with journalists, Mr. Murricane has also been cited passing out drinks alongside two members of the Wu-Tang Clan, RZA and GZA. Apparently, the trio entered a local dive together and then strode confidently behind the bar and started serving drinks to customers as if they were just three regular bartenders on their regular bar shift instead of three global celebrities. Oh, and just to make things even more Bill Murray, everyone who ordered from the group was served a shot of tequila, regardless of what they actually ordered. Of all the people in Hollywood whose nose you could break, Robert De Niro has got to be firmly in the maybe I shouldn't have done that list. But Bill Murray? Bill Murray did. To be fair to Bill, it was an accident. All the same though, during a fight scene they were shooting for Mad Dog and Glory, Murray managed to bop De Niro on the nose hard enough to break it. Whoops! On the plus side, the injury made Robert De Niro look even more well-suited to playing made men and wise guys alike. The only thing more Bill Murray than turning down a famous role and then that role going to a different actor is doing it twice to the same actor. Even Harrison Ford. Ford, beyond famous now for his performances as the lovable rogue Han Solo and Indiana Jones, the equally lovable rogue, was not well known before he appeared in Star Wars. But, and you might know where I'm going with this, guess who was offered both roles beforehand and turned them down? Yep, Bill Murray. This means there is an alternate version of Hollywood history where the Murricane plays Han Solo, Forrest Gump, Indiana Jones, and Buzz Lightyear. Wild. In addition to claiming that his part in Lost in Translation is his proudest to date, Murray is also quoted as saying that the inspiration for his character came from Charles Bronson, the actor, not the notorious British criminal played by Tom Hardy. This would make a lot of sense. Bronson, who made his career playing vigilantes in a host of westerns including The Magnificent Seven and Once Upon a Time in the West, also appeared in the seminal World War II film The Great Escape, and the parallels between his style in those films and Murray's approach as Bob Harris are very strong. Every actor who sticks around for long enough ends up with some pretty strange cameos on their resume, and Bill Murray is anything but an exception to that rule. While he's run the gamut from serious dramas to screwball comedies and everything in between, a lot of folks forget the Murricane appears very briefly in the 1986 musical comedy Little Shop of Horrors. He does a fine job in it too, but if someone asked the average person the first 20 things they remembered about Little Shop of Horrors, Bill Murray wouldn't necessarily make the list. But that might be the Bill Murrayest fact of them all. Despite being a comedy legend, he knows when not to steal the show, especially in the presence of carnivorous plants. post-apocalyptic horror comedy Zombieland, which stars Emma Stone, Woody Harrelson, and Jesse Eisenberg, is, by all accounts, a pretty entertaining romp through all the classic zombie flick tropes. It has a few shining moments here and there, though, and one of those is the scene in which the one and only Bill Murray appears as himself. Bill Murray, and attempts to play a humorous trick on Jesse Eisenberg's character by dressing himself up like a zombie. The joke works a little too well, though, and Murray is quickly relieved of his vitality by a crack shot from Lex Luthor over here. The funny thing about this scene is that Murray only appeared in the movie as a personal favor to Woody Harrelson, who is, as luck would have it, a huge Bill Murray fan. It takes a certain kind of person to let themselves be eliminated on film just as a favor, and that certain kind of person has a name. It's, wait for it, Bill Murray. Whether you love Bill Murray, hate Bill Murray, which I don't even know that's possible, or in fact actually are Bill Murray in disguise, the fact that Bill Murray is the only one of his kind refuses to be denied. Who else walks over to strangers at Wendy's, steals their fries, and then mutters, "No one will believe you"? Yeah, that's what I thought.